The fight over election rules in Georgia.
Early voting had already begun in Georgia, while there was a court battle still being fought about new rules that would have changed the way those votes are counted. On one side, Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger, a Republican who runs the elections and has won statewide office twice. On the other side, the majority of the Georgia State Election Board, also Republican, but appointed by supporters of Donald Trump. The new rules would have given county election boards more leeway in certifying results and would have demanded that poll workers hand count ballots at the end of election night to make sure that the tally matched the number of votes cast in each precinct. This is not an actual vote count, but part of a process called reconciliation, which usually happens later. Janelle King is a member of Georgia's State Election Board. Why do you believe these changes were necessary?
Well, let's talk about the hand count rule. What we were told by election officials, and not just election officials, election board members, that as I traveled throughout the state and I spoke into different counties, I realized that there was a issue that it kept popping up. And each of them told me that it was not uncommon for them to find ballots left in the scanner from the previous election. That being said, if there was a recount to happen during that election, it would be off. So what we did is we saw that there were certain precincts who counted their ballots before transferring them to the secured bag and going to the election office. They counted them to ensure that every ballot was out of the scanner. I just thought that was basic, common best practices. When we looked at the rule and we saw them actually test the rule, we watched the woman who presented it, who is an election official. We watched her count 758 ballots 3 times by 3 different people in a matter of 26 minutes. So we didn't see any delays.
But wouldn't counting the ballots by hand be less accurate?
Not at all, because what we're doing is we're matching it against the technology. So when an individual comes in to vote, they will check in on a poll pad. Once they vote, they'll put their ballot into the scanner, and then we have a scanner count from the machine. Once we pull those ballots out, we're making sure that the number of ballots in my hand matches the scanner and hopefully matches the poll pad. Having that extra checks and balance on the ground level is the way I see it, which is the precinct level. You're ensuring that the number is going to be accurate on the county level, which will also mean it'll be accurate on the state level.
Do you have confidence in Secretary of State Raffensperger?
I would like to.
But do you?
I don't. If you're a leader, whether you agree with the rules or not, you don't hinder them. And once we passed these rules, before any lawsuits were filed, he could have gone ahead and trained the staff on these rules so they would be prepared for this election. If you disagree with the rules, provide me with solutions. Help us make these rules work, or explain to me why they're a problem, and don't do it in the media. We found out how the Secretary of State feels about what we're doing through the media. He has not at one time reached out to any of us individually to talk to us. Prior to me joining this board, we all communicated. Now, all of a sudden, he's a mute.
The Secretary of State's office would say it had already trained most of the poll workers, and now the board is coming in with these new rules that they're not trained on.
Well, this is not the first year that the board has presented rules late in the game, so to speak. There are other years. There were other rules that this has happened with. And the fact of the matter is, it's not about us bringing in new rules and him not liking it. It's about creating best practices. Complaining about the timing is not something that I find to be credible. If you're a leader, you get it done.
The criticism of the board is that you were creating obstacles that would allow the election to be delayed or challenged.
Yeah. That's absolutely false. When we give our county board members access to the information that was recently obtained within the last 24 to 48 hours, because the election had just taken place, that information is readily available. Handing that over to our county board members, along with that legal document, that affidavit that says that you are certifying, not just that the election took place, you're certifying that the results in your precinct, in your county, and every precinct in every county, you're certifying that it's accurate, that it's perfect, that is free of fraud.
You know what the criticism is, that the board was packed with MAGA Republicans trying to throw a wrench in the works to delay or challenge the election.
To be clear, I am a Republican, particularly because of the fact that I believe in our party principles and our party platforms. I consider myself to be a Republican. I do not consider myself to be MAGA because I was a Republican before MAGA existed. I believe in our election process. That's why I wanted to participate in it. I believe in it so much so that during the primary, I didn't support President Trump, which I've said several times, but no media outlet seemed to have picked that up because it didn't fit their narrative. I'm confident I'm going to support him this go round, the general, but that's because I believe in our party principles and our party platform. And part of that is making sure that we not only have the Constitution protect us, but that we protect the Constitution.
At a rally here in Georgia, Donald Trump said this about you and the other Republican members of the election board.
They're on fire. They're doing a great job. 3 members, Janice Johnson, Rick Jeffries, and Janelle King. 3 people are all pit bulls fighting for honesty, transparency, and victory. They're fighting.
He called you pit bulls fighting for honesty, transparency, and victory. Were the new rules designed to ensure Donald Trump's victory?
Absolutely not. There's no way that this board can create rules that would benefit one candidate and not the other. Again, we have nothing to do with the outcome of the election. We have everything to do with the process of the election. So that's just impossible. I'm not sure what he meant by that. However, I am not going to crucify him because he said something that I may disagree with or I may not necessarily see the same way. I come on the board, and now he sees movement. So I think his excitement was simply because finally it looks like the election board had come alive and now we're doing our jobs, and he was excited about it.
Doing your jobs, your critics would say, in a way that would benefit his candidacy.
Well, only the critics that are supporting his opponent.
Brad Raffensperger is the Georgia Secretary of State, an elected Republican in charge of elections in the battleground state. You called what the state election board was trying to do 11th hour chaos. What do you mean?
Because it was at the 11th hour. There's a Supreme Court ruling called Purcell versus Gonzalez, and in that ruling they said do not make major changes to election processes 4 months before an election. Well, this was less than 2 months before an election. We were starting early voting. We have 3 weeks of early voting, and they're starting to put in rules 2 to 3 weeks before early voting even started. If you really want to have a well-oiled machine, and that's what the election day process is, you want your poll workers to train, retrain, and this is just a kink at the last moment. It just creates chaos.
What was the state election board trying to do?
Well, in effect, what they want to do is on election night, they wanted every local precincts, we have 2,400 of those, they wanted them to hand count the paper ballots. We've been fighting every day for 4 years to get quick results. They were going to push that out to 2 or 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning before many of these counties would be able to actually report their results, because hand counting just slows the process down.
Someone might think that hand counting the ballots would be the most accurate thing you could do.
Oh, it's absolutely not. You get 3 people together and start counting a stack of 1,000 pieces of paper, you're going to get probably 3 different answers, at least 1 different, and then you're going to have to go through it again, and all their different answers the next time may be different than what they just got, because it's just that there's just human error. It happens to all of us. Start counting out, $100 in $1 bills and see how well you do. And yet the bank does that all the time with their little machine that just spins through, and they do it a couple times to make sure it's all right. They also do their check, and that's what we do in our system.
A judge in Georgia put the hand count rule on hold, saying it was too close to the election. Another judge found some of the other rules unconstitutional. While those decisions are being appealed, none of the new rules will be in effect during this election.
Thank you for voting.